Okay, so let me give you just a quick minute. I do want you to copy it down this week. It says pick one conic section. We're going to learn about conics today. We have 4 of them. We have a circle, ellipse, hyperbola, or parabola. So you're going to pick one of those 4, and in the drop box you'll tell me which one you're picking. Then you'll answer this question. Describe how its conic section is found on a cone. So if you pick a circle, there's a specific way it's found on a cone. If you pick an ellipse, there's a different way that it's found on a cone. And you'll understand how to answer this question when we get a couple more slides in today. So pick one conic section, describe how its conic section is found on a cone. I'm going to go through that with you in just a little bit. So if you would give me a green check mark when you have the question down on your paper, then I'll know that you're ready to move on. And I will put this question up again at the end, but because it's such a detailed question, I want you to know when we get to that specific slide, oh, I should be writing this down because that will answer my essential question today. So there are 4 types of conic sections. We have a circle, which we all know what a circle looks like. An ellipse looks like this. So if you wanted to draw yourself a quick picture, you could. So an ellipse, when we were in kindergarten, 1st grade, you know, our early grade years, they called this an oval. Then we have a hyperbola, which looks like this. And then we have a parabola, which we're used to a parabola. So you have 4 types of conic sections. There is a formula for each one, which you'll get into later this week and at the end of next week. But again, I shared those notes with you, so that way you already have those formulas handy. So what is a conic section? A conic section takes a shape that's called a cone. See my cone right here in red. Let's highlight it. Here's my cone. Okay, so you have your cone here. And what a conic section does is it takes a plane. Remember what a plane is? A plane is a rectangular shaped piece. Or like if you think of a piece of paper, it's a rectangular piece of paper, and it's basically like sliding your rectangular piece of paper somewhere inside of your cone, your conic section. And this piece of paper, if I slide it horizontally, if I slide it vertically, it's going to give me one of my 4 conic sections. So let's go over what that means. Vertex is the very middle. This axis goes straight down the center. And the way that they form a cone, they walked you through this in a video on your online lesson, but it's just a line. They call it the generating line. And if you swirl that like in a circle, like think about you mixing batter at home for a cookie. If you have your spoon in the batter and you're mixing your batter, you are creating a cone because you're going around and around and around. That's called the generating line. The generating line is going to move around and around and around, and it makes this cone. So here is how you form each conic section. Hint, hint. This goes back to our essential question today. So how do they find a circle? If here's your cone, everybody see the cone here, and you take your plane, the plane is green, and you slide it in perpendicular to your cone, you get a perfect circle. So basically what we're saying is if you take a plane and you slide it into your cone, this one's going to get a circle. If you take this plane and you slide it in at an angle, take a peek at what kind of a section you're going to get. This time you're getting an oval, which is an ellipse. Here, if you take your plane and you slide it in, and notice it doesn't go all the way across both cones because it's coming down at an angle, the part where it hits the cone makes a parabola. If you take your plane and you slide it vertically, it's going to hit in 2 spots, at the top and at the bottom, and that's called a hyperbola. So we have 4 types of conic sections. You have a perfect circle, you have an oval, you have a parabola, or you have a hyperbola. So for your essential question today, you're going to pick one of these 4, and you're going to describe how they get that section. So you might say they take the plane and they slide it in perpendicular, it gets a circle. They take the plane, they slide it in straight up and down, and it gives you a hyperbola because it hits in 2 places. So anything like that would be fine to answer the essential question, but you're coming back to this picture and you're describing what's happening with the plane. It's just going to show me who watched the entire session and who got to this slide and who didn't. So that's all I'm looking for. Describe how did they get the circle? What did they do with the plane? This little slide is also in your online section, your online lesson. It describes what does the plane look like and what's the plane orientation. And this word right here is not nape, it's actually nap, like you take a nap. So one nap means it's only going to hit one of the cones. If it says 2 naps, see how it hits both cones? That's what it means by 2 naps. So here my plane hits 1 nap, 1 nap, 1 nap. This one is the only one that hits 2 naps. Okay, so I'm looking for these 2 boxes is basically what I'm looking for. All right, so let's move on. Also in 7.02, they're going to remind you that you're going to be needing to use the distance formula. So if you have forgotten what the distance formula is, it's right here. We're going to practice using it in just a moment. This formula is also on the note sheet that I file transferred with you guys. So we're going to try this formula in just a minute. Please give me a smiley face when you have the distance formula on your paper. Okay, since Alex, I think you may not really be in here, I'm going to remove you, just letting you know. You have to participate so I know that you're there. Okay, so let's try a distance formula. So here's my distance formula, and here are my coordinates on the graph. So let's think about what they're really asking us. If I were to draw a coordinate plane, and I want to graph letter A here, it's at -2, 2, and B is at 4, -10, somewhere down here. So distance formula means you're finding this length. You're trying to figure out what's the length of that line. So we can use this distance formula. I always like to write a blank formula first. So let me give you a minute for you to try and fill in your numbers. Remember that when we're looking at my values, it's always x, y, x, y. The first one gets 1s because they come first. Second ones get 2s because they came second. And go ahead and plug those values in. So let me give you a minute to get going and then I'll show you my work. Okay, so if here's my formula up here, I know it's supposed to be x2 minus x1. So x2 would be 4, and my x1 is a -2. So let's put in a 4 and a -2. So you guys see how when I write my original formula, see how I already have my 2 big minus signs in there? That way I don't forget to put in what my x2 and my x1 is, because now we know that that double negative is going to turn into a positive. Good job. Yep, you're absolutely right. So then back here we're going to have y2 and my y1. So my y2 is -10 and my y1 is 2. Perfect. So in here I get 6 squared is 36. And -12 squared means -12 times -12. So I get positive 144. Let's not forget there's a big square root around this whole thing. So I'm going to get the square root of 180. They might leave your answer just like that, or they might ask you for it in decimal form. So if I grab my calculator, the square root of 180 is 13.4. So the distance between point A and point B is 13.4. Any questions about any of those steps? Did that go okay? We've done distance formula before, it's just been a long time. So they're kind of reintroducing it to you this unit. The other formula that they're going to introduce you to is midpoint formula. So let's think about what midpoint really is asking you for. Midpoint wants the very middle between one point and another point. So before we do midpoint formula, let's make sure it makes sense. If here's a line, let me do a short line, and I want the distance between A and B, would we all agree that the distance would be halfway between the two? Is everybody okay with that concept, right? If here's A, here's B, the middle or the midpoint would be halfway between the two. How do we find halfway between something? We add them together and we divide by 2. That's halfway between the two. That's all the midpoint's doing. It's going to add the x values together, divide it by 2, add the y values together, divide it by 2. So that's where the midpoint formula comes from. So let's use our same coordinates as last time. Let's say A was -2, 2, and B was 4, -10. And let's try and find the middle point for those two. I'll give you a minute to try and plug in your numbers, and then I'll show you my work. The reason that they write it with the comma in between is because this will be your x-coordinate, comma your y-coordinate. This new formula is going to give me my one value that's going to be in between my point A and my point B. So let's plug in. I'm going to do my x1 plus my y1. my x1 plus my x2. So -2 plus 4, and then over here y plus y. So I'm going to get 2 over 2, comma, -8 over 2, which would be 1, -4. That would be your midpoint. Midpoint. Good job. Exactly. So on a graph, if I were going to graph these, well actually I graphed it on the last page. So let's go back to the last page and let's see if 1, -4 looks like it's in the middle. So let's change colors. Let's go to 1, -4. If my line were straight, then yes, I would have graphed it perfectly, and that would be the midpoint. So that's just one way you can double check. You should make sure that it does look like it's close to the middle. Just one quick way for you to double check your answer. So that was distance, that was midpoint. Again, we learned these definitely in geometry, but it's been quite a while since we've used them in Algebra 2. So I wanted to go over those two formulas. The last thing that we're going to cover today is your circle formulas, which again was also from geometry, but gosh, it's been a long time since we've done geometry. So let me give you a quick minute to copy down this equation right here. This is your circle equation. And I'm going to highlight the only 2 letters that are going to be replaced with numbers. We're going to replace our H and our K with numbers. Oh, and our R, sorry. So there's 3. H, K, and R get replaced with numbers. The other letters stay put. So H, comma, K is your center of your circle. And then R means radius. So we're going to try this formula out and see how we do. So whenever they ask you, write the equation of a circle, what we're going to write is x minus blank squared plus y minus blank squared equals r squared. So we kind of have, we're leaving ourselves 3 empty spots where I can fill in my center right here and my r over there. So let's try one. I'm going to rewrite this blank equation, and then we're going to fill in my center and my r, my radius. So it says the center of a circle is at 3, 5, and its radius is 8. What is the equation of the circle in graphing form? So let's write our equation again. X minus h squared y minus k squared equals r squared. So now underneath it, we'll do our blank one. And then I'm going to give you a minute to see if you can fill in your numbers. So we have 3 missing blanks here. Okay, this one is very straightforward. So your center is always h comma k. Isn't that handy? And your radius, that would be your r. So my h is a 3. H became a 3. My k became a 5. And then my r would be what? 8. Good job. So there's only one last thing I need to do to simplify this formula. I would change the 8 squared to say 64. That's it. The rest stays the same, just like this. So let's work ourselves backwards for a minute. What if I gave you this and I asked you, what's the center, what's your r? Let's just think about what we'd have to do. If I ask you what's the center, we know that h comma k is my center. Now remember, my formula is always supposed to be x minus, y minus. So since it's already in that format, x minus, this number is just my k. It's a positive 3. Since this is already y minus, what's my k? My k is just a 5. So do we see how once they go in the formula, it really looks like the opposite, right? It's going to look like the opposite number once we put it in the formula. How about my r? If it's 64, my r would be the square root of that. So my r would be 8. Are we okay with how we can work backwards? We're going to try again on the next slide, but I'm just making sure. Okay, excellent. Just making sure we have some practice. So let's try this one. Write the equation of a circle is x plus 6 squared plus y minus 2 squared equals 25. What's the center and what's the radius? So let's think about this one. Let's see. Close, so close. Okay, let's do r first. So my r is always r squared. So if it's 25, we know that my r is going to be a 5. Let's think about my formula for a minute. My formula is supposed to say x minus. This doesn't say x minus. This says x plus 6. So I'm going to rewrite that in a minute. This one says y minus. Okay, so I was able to change the 25 to a 5 squared. So we knew my r was 5. That's awesome. So my h and my k should be right here and right here. Right? Let's go back for a minute. So my h is right here. My k is right here. So when it said x minus 3, it was really a 3. When it said y minus 5, it's really a 5. So let's come here. If it says y minus 2, it's really just a 2. How can I rewrite a plus 6? If I wanted to have a negative in it, can't I rewrite a plus 6 as minus a negative 6? Are we okay with me doing that? A plus is the same as writing minus a negative. So now it's in the right format, right? Now it says x minus. So what's my h really? My h is really a negative 6. What's my k? 2. r equals 5. Here is the easiest way that I remember. Whatever I see up here, it's the opposite. Think about when we were factoring a long time ago and we would ask you for the solution. If I said, what's the solution of x plus 6? You'd say minus 6. Remember from way long time ago? Whatever was in parentheses, it became the opposite when it came out. That's how I think of circles. So whatever you see here, it's the opposite. Whatever you see here, minus 2, it's really a positive 2. So that helps me remember. When I see parentheses, I think opposite. So let's try another one just so I can make sure that you really grabbed hold of that idea. So whatever we see in here, it's really the opposite when we're talking about the formula and what the center is. So let's try another. We'll put a white screen up here. Okay, so here we go. X minus 7 squared plus y plus 2 squared equals 36. Can you give me the center and my radius? Fabulous. Perfect. Yep. So when we see a minus 7, that's going to be a positive 7. When I see a positive 2, it's going to be a minus 2. And what number squared is 36? 6. You got it. You did great. Good job. All right. Did that one go okay? You feeling more comfortable now? It's like one-on-one tutoring today. I love it. So that's how circles work. Circle equation, I can either give it to you in the circle equation, or I can give it to you as the center and the radius, and you just stick your numbers back in. You can go one way or the other way. So again, that was it for this week. We were just doing 701 and 702. So your essential question again is to pick one conic section. So think in your head, which one do you want to pick? Do you want to pick circle, ellipse, hyperbola, or parabola? So write that word down. Then I want you to describe how its conic section is found on a cone. Meaning, what do you have to do with that plane to get your circle? What do you have to do with the plane to get the hyperbola? Does it touch one nap or two naps? Does it have to be perpendicular or can it be horizontal? It all goes back to that chart we did earlier. All right, thanks guys. I hope that you have a great week.